we will call tonight's meeting to order for the Norfolk School Committee. Time is 7:03 p.m. and it is Wednesday, March 23rd. In accordance with Chapter 71, Section 38N of the Massachusetts General Law, in public hearing for the purpose of discussion of the proposed fiscal year 2022 annual school budget will be conducted by the Norfolk School Committee on Wednesday, March 3rd, commencing at 7 in the Norfolk Town Hall, room 124, located at 1 Liberty Lane, Norfolk, Massachusetts. This meeting shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternate public access to this meeting shall be done through NCTV. This application will allow users to view the live meeting. During the public comment segment, the meeting will be open via the following link, which is meeting ID meet.google.com/MJQ-QSTA-CHP. Also have a call-in number that's available, which is 1-518-897-9090. PIN for the meeting 577-028-391. The budget documents will be available for review and or public inspection in the Office of the Superintendent of Schools during business hours, which is 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., starting on Monday, March 1st, and as well as Tuesday, March 2nd. Any questions may be directed to Dr. Alardi. Her number is 508-528-1225. And as we start out all of our meetings, the Norfolk Schools, we'll read our mission statement, which is the Norfolk Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Roll call, please.
Medora Champagne.
Jennifer Wynn.
Shannon Meneses.
Sarah Ward.
Thomas Doyle.
Victoria Saldana.
Go.
Ingrid Alardi.
Sorry, I didn't know what the hand signal was for a second there. All right, so we'll move into the main course of, so just for tonight's purposes, there's actually two meetings, so everyone's understanding of that. The first one will consist of the budget meeting itself. We'll get to public comment on that in a moment after the presentation's done. Just a reminder, we'll remind people again on this. In the event, if you do have public comment or as you're listening to the meeting, please make sure you mute yourself during it so we can minimize the amount of background noise. And from here, we'll move on to the presentation of our proposed 2022 budget.
Great. So thanks everybody for joining us. For those of you that are joining us virtually tonight, we have a presentation to review. I seem to have an echo, so excuse me for a second. Presentation to review the proposed budget request for the Norfolk Public Schools for fiscal 2022. During the presentation tonight, I think you will hopefully end with a good sense of our staffing and our financial needs for 2022. We will also provide some comparisons to per pupil spending from Norfolk to other like regional communities. And then when it is time, as Thomas said, once the presentation's open or complete, we will open it for public comment and have a chance to hear your feedback on the budget and respond to any questions that there may be. So we'd like to start tonight by sharing with the community the Norfolk Public Schools District vision and mission statements. These statements really drive all of our budget decision making. So the vision you can see up on the screen, and Thomas earlier read the mission, so I won't read it again. But all of our budget decisions, when we're looking at how to spend Norfolk's financial dollars, we look to try to make decisions that have the best, strongest impact on our educational programs and support us in meeting both students' academic as well as social, emotional, and other needs. The presentation overview tonight, something happened to this slide, I apologize. But the presentation overview tonight will be divided into 5 sections. We will start by talking about the budget history in Norfolk because I think that provides some important context to what our spending needs look like. I also will talk tonight a little bit about the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic had on last year's budget and how that impacts us going into fiscal 2022. We will talk about our per pupil spending costs and comparisons to other communities, and we'll also talk about the major drivers to this year's budget. Last, we'll talk about enrollment, projected enrollment for next year and what that looks like in terms of our local class sizes, and then share some of the cost savings efforts the district's put in place in order to keep our budget request manageable and to allow the town of Norfolk to be able to successfully fund the elementary request. Last, we'll end with a brief video that talks about the return on investment that Norfolk sees for its educational dollars. So, starting with the budget history, and I've shared this before, so if you've seen it before, you won't be surprised. But back during the years of fiscal year 2008 to 2013, Norfolk, like many, many other communities across the state, was experiencing a financial recession. During those budget years, the town was unable to fully fund the school's operating budget at an appropriate level. When we are transitioning from one year to the next, it generally takes about 3% budget increase just to bring forward the current existing staff and absorb increases for contracts like transportation services and other expenses. So whenever you see a budget increase or a budget decrease, if the change from year to year is less than a 3% increase, that leads to fairly significant cuts of staffing, sometimes elimination of programs. So between 2008 and 2013, where you're seeing years where there was like a negative 4% cut to the school budget, a 0%, negative 0.96, the cuts during those years were very deep. We lost a lot of staffing positions, educational support positions, significant programs like the foreign language program and the enrichment programs that were offered. Those programs were not able to be funded and were reduced. The budget picture financially from the town for the last 8 years has been significantly healthier. So you'll see between 2014 and 2020, the schools were seeing annual budget increases probably around 4% as an average over those times. Again, when you're looking to restore positions, 3% is your just annual increase in costs. So when you see deep cuts like you saw during the recession years, it takes many, many years for districts to recover and restore those positions. Last year, you'll see in fiscal 2021, the town was not able to fund the initial budget request and made reductions at the spring town meeting. So last year, our budget request that was approved by school committee was for 4.4%. It was cut back to 2.6% last year. So the COVID impact on the town and school budgets, again, because of the COVID pandemic, the town was anticipating seeing significant declines in both state funding and local revenues. So at the town meeting, the school budget was reduced by 2.47%, which equates to about $315,000 for fiscal 2021. During the special town meeting, the town was able to restore about $84,000 to the school budget because some revenue sources came in higher than initially projected, which led to a total gap for last fiscal year of about 1.8% or $231,000. This did lead us to have to eliminate some positions and make some changes to the way that we were delivering services. Because of the pandemic this year and the unusual way that we were returning to school in the hybrid model, for this fiscal year, we were able to absorb some of those position changes. It will be critical that those positions are restored in order for us to successfully reopen in full in the fall. So in 2020, or last year during the budget presentation, I was able to report to the community that we had fully restored all of the classroom teaching positions that we had lost during the recession years, that we had added back funding for curriculum updates so that all of our programs were scientific research-based curriculum. We were able to partially restore our health education program, technology staff and library staffing, and had been able to eliminate fees for transportation as well as tuition for our full-day kindergarten program. Because of the setbacks last year, as a result of reductions to school funding, we had to eliminate the previously restored funding for curriculum updates. So we were scheduled this year to update our social studies and science programs to fully align with the new state standards. Some of our science materials are dated and need to be replaced. We had to table that for this year and cut that funding. So we zeroed out the new curriculum line. Technology staff, we had to reduce a 0.5 technology integration specialist at the H. Olive Day. We weren't able to fund that position this year. We had hoped with the restoration of funding in the fall that we would be able to bring that back with that $84,000, but because of additional costs for COVID that we had to add additional staffing, remote learning support teachers, additional custodial staffing, we were not able to restore that position this year. Additionally, as I just mentioned, we had to eliminate the library position at Freeman Kennedy, so our library staffing is now behind where we were. Additionally, last year we had to make some additional reductions to the budget that went beyond the cuts that I have just described. We had added a 1.0 assistant principal position in the budget last year so that we would have a full-time assistant principal in both H. Olive Day School and at the Freeman Kennedy School. That position was approved in the school committee budget, but we had to cut it after the spring town meeting. We also had to reduce a 0.5 school psychologist, and we eliminated 2 positions we have for lunch monitors to supervise lunch in the cafeteria. If you look at the average school budget over the last 15 years, you'll see that our average increase has been 2.27%. Again, that helps, I think, the public understand why it's so difficult to recover from recession years and when you lose programs and positions. This is a comparison chart that shows how per pupil spending in Norfolk compares to the state. This is data that people can find if you want to look at it at the, on the Mass Department of Education website. The per pupil spending accounts for all sources of revenues that school districts receive. So the funding from the town as well as any state funding and grants that are received. All that financial information is reported to the Department of Ed in a year-end spending report and is then compiled and shared out with the public. Norfolk has traditionally spent significantly less than the state average to educate our students. So per pupil spending in Norfolk, you can see back in 2013, we're about $1,000 less per pupil in education spending. We did make some progress in 2015 and 16. We came closer to closing that budget gap. But as enrollment started to grow in Norfolk, you'll see that the gap grew again. So as of 2019, which is the last financial data, that's the 2019-2020 school year, that's the last financial data that DESE has available. We are about $900 less than the state average on per pupil spending. The Department of Ed every year establishes criteria to help districts identify comparison communities to use for the purpose of evaluating curriculum programs, looking at student achievement, and other sources of data. These are the communities that we use as our comparison communities. They are also all districts that do not have a high school, so the comparison spending is much more apples to apples than they are in districts where you might have additional costs for operating a high school program. You can see when you look at our per pupil expenditure comparisons that for the last 3 years, Norfolk has been at the bottom of the per pupil spending comparisons, with only Berkeley spending less per pupil than Norfolk. This year, in 2019-20, we spent about $1,000 less to educate our students than Rentham, and about $1,300 less than Plainville. When you look at the difference between what we spend per pupil and you multiply that by our enrollment, so it's about 865 students less per pupil than the state average, and we have 990 students. We are close to spending almost $1 million less annually on education dollars than comparison communities or than the state average. So the budget request for 2022, we are looking for a 5.09% increase, which is the largest increase that we have brought forward to the town in the last 10 years since I've been here. However, it's important to note again, as I mentioned earlier, that our budget was reduced last year by 1.8%. So a large portion of this increase is restoration of previously eliminated positions. The budget request will allow the district to maintain level services, to meet contractual obligations for salary increases, cost of living increases, steps and lane changes for our professional staff and non-professional staff. It will allow us to restore the new assistant principal position that was added in last year's budget and to restore the Freeman Kennedy library position. We are looking to add a 0.5 library assistant to the H. Olive Day School. We only currently have a 0.8 librarian. It's not a full-time position. We will have 8 first grade classes next year. Our enrollment continues to grow at that building, and we need support in order to be able to run the full library program. Also, in the past, our library program has been highly contingent on parent volunteer support. Given the current COVID restrictions, we do not have volunteers coming in and out of the school, and we're not sure what that will look like next year. We are also looking to bring back, as we mentioned earlier, the H. Olive Day Technology Integration teaching position, and we're looking to increase that position by 0.5. The reason for that is that One, we've had a really difficult time filling a .5 technology integration specialist position with a highly qualified candidate. We've advertised for a number of years, and we have ended up contracting with retired teachers because we haven't been able to secure a qualified candidate. Additionally, our network has expanded significantly, and we have been critically short-staffed in the technology department for a number of years. We only have 2 technology support positions that support a network of about 250 adult users and now close to 1,000 student users. Many of our curriculum programs rely on technology, and it's just not sufficient staffing. So by adding that additional .5, the person will be a .5 teacher, but also will support the technology department with network maintenance and troubleshooting. We are also looking to add a math assistant position. That's a full-time position. And that is to support our students who we are concerned may be experiencing learning gaps in mathematics as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the remote and hybrid learning. With our benchmark data that we've been collecting and looking at student achievement and progress, we are finding that math is the area that has had the greatest impact. And then again, we would like to begin to restore funding for new curriculum adoption because we need to address some critical changes and updates to our social studies and science programs. So this is just a breakdown of what the budget changes look like. We have the vast majority of our budget request is really cost of living increases and contractual obligations. So you can see about $347,000 of that is contractual changes for teachers. And then all other staff, $155,000 of the increase, and that other staff is our food service staff, our paraprofessional staff, our custodial staff, our secretary staff. One thing that I would note in the other staff, we also are looking to make adjustments to our paraprofessional salary scale this year. We have been doing community comparisons, and there are places in that scale, particularly for our newly hired paraprofessionals, that are no longer competitive with the market. We were being outpaced by King Philip, had higher rates for new paraprofessional staff, as well as Rentham and Plainville. And those positions are critical to our educational programming and very difficult to recruit for. So there is a slight adjustment to the paraprofessional salary scale included in that. At this time, we're anticipating 2 teacher retirements, so we should see a savings of about $55,000 there, with a net in contractual obligations of an increase of $448,226. These are the budget changes by position, and again, I've already spoken about most of the increases of positions. The only ones that are added to this slide, we are looking to increase our team chair position by 0.1. That is a half a day. We have an increasing population of students that are receiving special education services, and the team chair is responsible for coordinating those meetings and hosting those meetings, and we need to increase the position in order to meet the demand. We also are looking for a half-day increase to our current occupational therapist position at Freeman Kennedy. We have a new program that we have brought up for students with global developmental delays, and in order to meet contractual obligations for service delivery, we need additional time. And then lastly, we're bringing back the 2 lunch monitor positions because we are optimistic that next year will be a much more typical school year, and students will be able to access lunch the way they have in the past, and we will need those positions. There are 2 staffing reductions. We will be eliminating a kindergarten assistant position. We will be going from 8 to 7 kindergarten classrooms next year. And we will be eliminating the 2 temporary custodial positions that were added this year as a result of the COVID increased demands for cleaning and sanitization. I won't go in detail as far as the budget changes on the expense side. You can see the minor restoration of $20,000 to address the changes to curriculum, primarily social studies and science. There's a small increase to the H. Olive Day service and supply budget, and that has to do with the addition of an 8th first grade classroom next year. Some reductions in services and supplies at Freeman Kennedy and technology. Special education as a whole, we have done a really good job of bringing students back to the district and maintaining strong programs. Our tuition costs and transportation are down in special education, although we are adding some contractual services to meet the needs of some unique needs of students that we have entering the district. Other than that, minor changes per pupil transportation is up by about $17,000. That reflects that we will be bidding a new bus contract, and that is what we are estimating at this time for an escalation in transportation costs. Facilities line is up slightly again because we have to increase what we are budgeting for cleaning supplies, materials, personal protective gear, in anticipation of an increased need for cleaning and sanitizing school buildings next year. Just so that you can see, this is a breakdown of our budget by category. So 3.6% of our total 5.1% budget increase is contractually driven. 1.4% of the overall increase, it reflects restoration of positions that we lost and curriculum funding that we lost last year. 0.3% is enrollment driven. And then we have actually a savings in the special education department, and only 0.2%, or about $30,000, reflects new costs or program expansion, and that's primarily the technology, the ad for technology. When you look at the whole school budget, it's important to note that about 87% of our budget is salaries. We are the largest employer in the town. We have well over 250 employees. So most of the budget for the schools is fixed. 87% goes to salaries, 8% goes to services, and that is almost exclusively our transportation contract. In the budget, we have 2.6% of our total budget that goes to supplies, 0.9% other expenses, and that is really usually contractual obligations that we have for sick leave buyback or for retirements. And then only 1% of our budget goes to out-of-district tuitions. Enrollment and class size projections for next year. We are expecting that we will not be increasing any classroom teaching positions. We will have the same number of teachers next year as we do this year. Every year we do have to make some switches of positions and move teachers from one grade level to a next to accommodate the shifts that we see in enrollment. Kindergarten will be going down to 7 classrooms. At this time, we are expecting 145 kindergarten students with an average class size of 20.7. First grade, we do need to increase to 8. We will have 169 students with class sizes of 21. Grade 2 will remain at 7 with a current enrollment at 126 or class sizes of 18. Grade 3 will remain at 6 sessions. We have currently 133 students that will be going into grade 3, class sizes of 22.1. Fourth grade will be going from 7 to 6 classes. We're down a teacher. It'll be 125 students with class sizes of 20.8. Grade 5 will be 7, 140 students, class sizes of 20. And grade 6, we have to increase back up to 7 classes, 145 students, 20.7 for class size. So all of our class sizes will be within our class size policy limits, although they are probably going to remain on the higher end compared to our comparison communities. Again, with those same comparison communities that we use to benchmark all of our data, you'll see that Norfolk has a class size average of 20 and has for the last several years. We are at the higher end of class size averages compared to those comparison communities in the same places about Norfolk, Plainville, Sudbury with class sizes of 20. Lincoln, you can see typically is in the 16, 17 range. So our class sizes, when you look at those same comparison communities, are not as competitive as they once were. Cost savings, again, we do always recognize that the town has limited revenues to support many operating departments, and we do everything that we possibly can to generate savings where we can. We have for a number of years shared a facilities director and an assistant director position, which saves the district about $40,000 annually. We have added a shared HVAC maintenance support position. That was really critical for us this year and saved us significant budget dollars as we prepared for the COVID pandemic. So we had to replace an air conditioning unit system in the H. Olive Day office. We were able to do the majority of that work in-house. All of the upgrades to our HVAC system to improve ventilation in the classrooms, replacement of all of our filters, daily adjustments to the intake of outside air have all been handled in-house. In order for us to open, we actually opened in the summer, July 7th, and brought students with special educational needs in for services. At that time, you could not get plexiglass anywhere. There was, and the prices were, through the roof. Our facilities department built the partitions that you see in both main offices and that we put into classrooms. We saved about $10,000 for that, but it also allowed us to bring programs back much faster than many districts. We continue to manage through the maintenance position in-house projects like the replacement of a floor in the each holiday walk-in freezer. We share a custodial position with the town, and that runs on a Tuesday to Saturday schedule, and we save significant costs in overtime. We continue to cost share professional development with our regional partners. There's a lot of mandated professional development that the Department of Education requires, and by sharing those costs, we save about $20,000 annually. We continue to build strong special educational programs. We were able to bring many students back to the in-person learning in district. And additionally, we have new students that enrolled that were able to start in our in-district programs. We're saving $333,000 as a result of that next year. And then we continue to do competitive grant writing. We are expecting to bring in $130,000 of competitive grants that fund our wellness director position, parent workshops, evening workshops, and other critical needs in the district. So the total cost savings efforts for next year will generate about $592,000 in savings. I think we also really want to express to the community the importance of appropriately funding the public schools in Norfolk. This is not just because we believe every child in Norfolk deserves a very high-quality, rigorous educational experience, but there's a financial reason too. If we do not keep our programs competitive, or our class sizes competitive, or our per pupil spending competitive, we risk losing students to the two regional charter schools, and there's two large charter schools in our area. The Benjamin Franklin Classical Charter School expanded just a couple of years ago from 450 to 750 students, and the Foxborough Regional Charter School serves about 1,600 students. When a student leaves Norfolk to attend either of those two charter schools, which are free to any resident who chooses to enroll there, we lose about $15,000 in state funding for each student, and that funding follows the student to the charter school. So if you think about that, if we were to lose 4 students, we lose the equivalent of a full-time teacher's salary. We do know that the budget, our budget request this year is higher than it has been. We do know that the town has limitations in terms of the revenue sources and what they can fund. So there are staffing needs that we have in the budget that we are not bringing forward at this time. We would in the future like to be able to add a full-time developmental math teacher to provide increased services to students across the district. We would really like to see our library programs competitive to what they were back in 2008. We used to have 2 full-time librarians and 2 full-time assistants in each library. We would need to add a .3 librarian to increase our both library positions to full-time. We would like to restore the school psychologist position that was cut in last year's budget, but we are not able to bring that forward yet. The .5 ELL teacher and 1.0 ELL aide. We have a very rapidly growing population of English language learners in Norfolk, and if it continues to grow at the rate that it is growing, we will not be able to continue to provide the mandated state services with the staffing that we currently have. Again, as our network expands and we rely more on technology to support curriculum, we need to address the shortage we have in technology maintenance staff. And the custodial summer help is because our buildings are now used by the rec department and by our special education department for increased time during the summer. And having some additional custodial help to turn the buildings around and clean would really be a big advantage to the district. There's several expense needs that we are not bringing forward at this time. Our current paraprofessional staff work 182 days a year versus the teachers 184. They do not have the 2 full professional development days in their contract or in their work in the budget. We would like to add an additional day of training because we think those positions are critical, and we want our paraprofessional staff to be able to receive the same curriculum content training that our educators are receiving. We have wanted for a number of years to eliminate our band fees so that that program can be free and accessible to all children that want to participate with no additional costs. We are not able to do that in this budget. And then lastly, primarily because the Freeman Kennedy School was all built at one time, and all the technology in that building was purchased at the same time, things are starting to age out, and we need to start to replace that technology. We have a 5-year technology replacement plan, and in order to keep up with that plan and the costs, we really should be budgeting $125,000 annually for technology replacement. We have not put that into the operating budget. Return on investment. we just want to make sure that even though we spend less educational dollars per student in Norfolk, the town does receive a very strong return on the investment. Our students in Norfolk continue to perform in the top 18% on state tests, such as the MCAS. We have strong research-based programs for social emotional learning. We have lower than average rates of student discipline or bullying incidents. We continue to have outstanding programs in the arts for music, visual arts, chorus, and band. We do have physical and health education twice a week. Many districts are down to once a week. The majority of our teachers have advanced degrees and more than 10 years of teaching experience, and we do have a very low turnover of teaching staff. And we have outstanding facilities. The buildings are clean, well-maintained, great playground space. We do publish an annual benchline and basemark report, so if anybody wants to see that data in a different format, there's a link to the slide in the presentation. Again, this is just a picture of what the MCAS data has looked like over the last couple of years compared to the state, and you can see those trends that we continually, Norfolk's blue, we continue to significantly outperform the state on measures of academic achievement, and that's in English language arts as well as math. And tonight we're just going to end with a very quick video. We wanted to highlight some of the things that we've done in this unusual school year and how the district has continued to work to provide high quality education even with limited budget revenue and significant challenges as a result of the pandemic.
The pandemic caused by the coronavirus has provided many challenges to our schools, families, and communities. But it is a challenge we are able to face head-on due to our strong partnership with and support from our community and families, as well as the relentless efforts shown by the dedicated staff at the Norfolk Public Schools to provide the best learning environment possible for our students. Since July 7th of 2020, our student support staff, including the Special Education Department and EL Department, has worked diligently to offer a full array of services to students receiving special education and language acquisition services. This included robust in-person learning models. During this school year, our teachers, support staff, technology specialists, nurses, custodians, and administrators worked tirelessly to shift pedagogy practices, revamp learning spaces, institute safety protocols and procedures, despite significant cuts to the operating budget. In addition, every student received a personal device and access to numerous online tools to support their learning at home. In order to meet the extensive new safety guidelines that were mandated by DESE and the CDC, our classrooms and buildings were equipped with air purifying systems, cleaning supplies, and were disinfected regularly with electromagnetic sprays. This effort allowed our district to be one of the few districts in our area that were able to open its doors to students in September. Norfolk Public School teachers, support staff, and administrators focus on adopting research-based, innovative approaches to teaching students in a hybrid and remote platform. We hit the ground learning in September and never stopped because we were determined to continue to offer an engaging, rigorous, and joyful learning environment despite the challenges presented. We created virtual classrooms to engage and support our students with independent learning and increased our live learning times. We mastered various technology platforms to foster our students' creativity and incorporated new resources to develop students' problem-solving skills. With support from our technology team and integration specialists, we were able to transition many of our best practices that we utilized during the regular school year to the hybrid and remote models. Students at home also partner with peers in the classroom to work on projects and assignments that build critical thinking skills and were provided with opportunities to work in cooperative learning groups throughout the school day. Our educators also partner with our families, community, and education-based organizations to offer students numerous enrichment programs. We also focus on providing a well-rounded education that fosters social and emotional learning, relationship building, and community. Partnering and supporting our families continue to be an area of focus to the Norfolk Public Schools. Throughout the school year, we provided our families with a wide variety of resources relating to staying healthy and safe, supported caregivers and parents with resources so they could in turn assist their child with learning at home, as well as provided support with technology. This year was far from perfect, and there is no replacement for in-person learning, but all members of the Norfolk school community work collaboratively around a common goal, to provide a strong education to all our students. This common vision and commitment to excellence has allowed us to continue to uphold our district's mission of offering a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students, and to provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world.
Oops. All right, at this point, I think, Thomas, we're ready to open for questions, unless Susan has any questions first.
Okay. So we'll throw that open for questions. So just as a reminder, everyone else keep muted unless you are the person asking the question. I assume, Pam, you're gonna play the role of letting them in here? I don't even know how this works technology-wise.
The teacher. School committee isn't asking questions first?
Oh,
Did I miss
no one
that?
wanted to speak.
Oh,
Do you have
I
a
was just
question?
waiting.
Yeah, let the,
Okay, let the public.
yeah.
okay.
And then just as an additional reminder, any questions are just specifically to the budget. Any other questions, stay tuned for meeting two. So at this point, I guess we'll open up to any questions that are out there. And I guess try to use the raise your hand button as I'm seeing at the bottom here, so if we have any questions at this time. Currently not seeing any hands. All right, well then why don't we circle back, so we'll, in case someone comes up to something, so why don't we go to the committee, see if anyone has any questions at the onset, and then we'll just go back to the folks after.
I try to give Wade time, because I feel like I'm always the first person. I have a question on page, I guess it's slide 22. In grade 2, there are 126 kids with a class size of 18 for next year. And third grade has 133 with a class size of 22. So why would a class of smaller size get an additional classroom?
Because we prioritize by our school committee policy lower class sizes for K to 2 because
through two,
kids are
okay.
still learning the
Okay.
basic fundamentals of
Okay.
reading.
Okay,
So that's why.
so that's why. All right,
And our class size policy for 3rd through 6th is slightly higher.
gotcha. Okay. And my second question is, I noticed that we are getting rid of the additional custodial staff that we had hired this year.
Yep.
I'm wondering if, is there a plan? What if next year the same cleaning protocols are in place, disinfecting between all the lunches, the electromagnetic, I mean, the high-touch areas, what if we still have to do that? Would we be able to come back and revisit the custodial?
Yes, and I do believe there may be additional funding through the federal
COVID.
government
Okay.
or
All right.
through COVID relief as a result of that. But we have also really we bought additional equipment. We have more equipment than we started the year with for electrostatic spraying.
Mhm.
We've streamlined processes. So I think even with reduced staff, we'll be able to keep up with the buildings at a higher level than we have been in the past.
Okay, and not stress out that staff too much?
Nope.
Okay. And what about the lunch monitors? I mean, what if we have to have additional staffing next year for that because we need additional lunches? I mean,
So
if-
we have, right now, we are planning for, even with the reopening plans that we have going forward, we cannot have our students eating in the classroom at 3 feet of distance, so we have
Right.
to have them in the cafeteria. So we have we are planning for 2 lunch monitors in each building to supervise the cafeteria. We may have to have additional lunches because we have to break them.
Right.
So that would add increased hours, but not increased positions.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any questions from?
Just, if I could just make a
Yeah.
comment just about this year relative to next year, something that you just said is that, I know we went over the budget that we had originally proposed almost exactly a year ago for this year, that was then changed a couple times through necessity, but I think it's also important to note that a lot of what we've been able to do this year has been supplemented by some of the federal relief money that has come into the district. So everything that has been done has not just been done with the local budget.
That's
It
correct.
is- I just think that to give the viewing public kind of an idea of what, what has been done with what we're working with, it's extraordinary to me that we've been able to do what we've been able to do with what we've had.
Absolutely, absolutely. There were significant costs that we were able to offset slightly with COVID relief funds through the state. And, in terms of planning for our reopening, some of those costs are, putting up tents, hiring additional staff, cleaning supplies, PPE gear, all of that was beyond the operating budget. So I think that's a really good point. Thanks.
Still no hands yet.
You
But-
could also type questions into the chat if they're having difficulty with raising their hand. And Pam, you can check the chat box. That might be helpful. Vicki, did you have any additional comments or anything you wanted to add to the budget?
No, I just wanted to say that a lot, to your point of supplementing the budget, I know that Dr. Lardy has spent actually numerous hours writing and applying for those grants. It's not something that is easily allocated. Each district has to apply and kind of show what they're going to use for, and because of that, we really were able to provide a lot of additional curriculum supplies as well for this year to kind of support the at-home, the students learning at home, with materials. But yeah.
Which brings me back to something I can't believe I forgot about. I guess I'm just venting at this point. I'm just always, as a parent, disappointed that we're at the bottom of the list. And I know that last year, somebody brought up at the same exact meeting, well, how do we get ourselves up? And I understand, because I've sat through how many budgets, but maybe for the public, why we're asking, this is a big ask, my understanding. 5% to go to the next step is to go to the
Advisory
select board or advisory,
Advisory.
and then if they approve, then it goes to the
Town meeting.
town meeting. Okay. Doesn't it have to go to select board too? Okay.
It's advisory.
So we're asking a big ask, which is unusual for us. But again, I feel like there's a lot of things that are a developmental math teacher, and I know you're gonna laugh. This is my big thing. It's just so important, and my kids don't even use it. But I
I
see.
believe in math.
She always says, Jen.
Dora's laughing, I can see it.
But it is, and every year I see it cut from the budget, and my heart just sinks because I see what happens, and it's so important to get the foundations of math. And an assistant is nice, but they're not especially taught. So again, I'm just venting. I'm not saying, I don't know what the answer is, but I am going to beg, that we get the 5%. And would the developmental math teacher be next in line if we were able to, or
Yeah,
no? Or
that's
no?
that list is, yes, that's
is
top
that
of the
the
list.
hierarchy? Okay.
Could I just clarify for the record that I firmly believe in math instruction?
No, I meant that Medora laughs at me because I'm always like, where's
Medora's
the
like, "Wait, I
developmental math? We need the
But-
developmental math. She always
but-
laughs, like that's my thing.
To Jen's point, this is a big ask for a single year taken in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Taken in 2 consecutive years, this is a level services budget. This budget is designed to restore what was taken from the budget last year through necessity, and it was done, we worked with the town very graciously, when there was an overage in the fall at town meeting, a portion of that budget was restored. So this is not sour grapes about last year, but these 2 years together should, in my view, be treated as one single budget. And, what is the average of the ask that we have? It's basically a level services budget when you take into account the enrollment increases that we've seen. So I agree with you 100% that I would love to see all of the additional things that we've listed on the page as not being requested as a component of this budget. But what we're talking about is level services and restoring to a baseline so we can open, and ideally with at least a 0.5 developmental math specialists, support those students that may have fallen behind during the past 15 months, I guess, in a year, however long it's been that this has been going on.
Ever.
Forever. A decade, I don't know.
I guess we can separately have a motion that will agree that Medora is pro math. Have that on the record.
Don't let it get out to my kids, okay? They think I love math.
No, I think your point is an excellent one that, and I think we made this point a couple meetings ago when we had updated on this, in that in essence, this is a 2 years worth of budget that's being put together. So I've been on a number of these through the years. I remember the negative years, those are really bad. So yeah, we had to make the cut, and this is the biggest ask we've ever had, but it's an ask with an asterisk. in that it's 5.09, but in essence spread over 2 years. So I know you just made this point, but I think it's a very, very important point to make sure people are completely 100% clear on. That's how to look at this. It is still a very, very conservative budget, all things considered. As Dr. Lardy laid out, it's essentially 3% to turn the lights on every year, and everything we have to go before. So then you're only talking 2.09, and out of that is a much smaller percentage of additional things that we want to add. There's still, a number of wish list items that I have personally wanted for any number of years we've yet to be able to get to. The band fees has always been a point of contention with me. It drives me nuts that we have to charge kids for something like that. But we don't have that option. To Jen's point, something as simple as we should have the developmental math. I mean, that we should, but that's the reality that we're facing. So the timeline that was laid out clearly delineated all the things that we've been added in or have been able to add back in, but also showed just how long it takes to add all this stuff in. So this is gonna take us some time to get to where we want. We'll get there, not as quickly as any of us want, I presume, but we will eventually get there. So I think if anyone has any kind of sticker shock regarding the percentage itself, please understand the makeup of that percentage and then what went into that, and then just understand just how conservative and this budget in fact is. So I think it's very realistic. We understand, as has been stated, the town difficulties financially. Thankfully, they're better shape than we anticipated even the beginning of the school year, which is very nice. So we think it's as well within something that can be done. We think it should be done, and I think it's something the town would be proud of because we want to continue to have a school system we're all very proud of.
And I would agree with that. When you look at our ask last year for the town, was a 4.4% increase. And we're only 0.6 up from that, even though we took a 1.8% reduction last year.
That's what I was going to ask. Is there a way to break it down for us and the public and to understand at face value 5.09 seems high for 1 year. Is there a way to break that? And I'm sure we could do the math. What it really looks like over 2 years.
We'll have Medora do the math, and she's pro math.
Yeah,
Right?
she's
I'm actually doing some math
doing
right
it
now.
right now.
I want everyone
Telling
to
you
watch.
that, and I probably have the figures you're calculating.
Texting
but
my
the-
son to do the math for me.
The restoration costs for bringing back what was lost last year are $187,423 of the $600,000. So
Okay.
it is 1.4% of our ask is strictly restoring what was cut last year.
That was my exact question. What
Yeah.
is the restoration?
And
So it's very much in line.
3.6 is contractual.
Okay, so I was going to say, it seems, that aside, that the ask this year is actually in line with what it would be every
Exactly.
year. Okay,
Yeah, it's actually
is-
lower, probably.
okay.
Yeah, this is consistent with ask, and even if you go back to more recent history, we had a couple over 4 and 4.25.
Right.
To what Dr. Lardy said, it's actually lower than that,
Yeah, it's lower,
despite
that's right,
all the difficulties and obstacles that we face. So that's why I do think it is it's as conservative as a budget request as you can possibly have.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think it was helpful for me, but also just to say, again, 5.09 seems high, but in reality, when you hear
Right.
those numbers, it seems more
Yep.
realistic.
Yeah, if you took out the restoration, we'd be at 3.6.
Okay, so less, yep. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
I don't see any hands raised, and we're checking the chat. We don't seem to have anything.
Just, if I could get back to the math.
Yes.
We're gonna focus on Medora.
So
and
I
Matt
just
tonight.
did, I mean, I know we did Ingrid always shows, relative to what the, and I may have done the math wrong, frankly, but the number still speaks for itself. I may be over, but what the average ask has been since 2008.
Yeah.
Right, looking at that. And so if you incorporate 5.09 this year and the 2.6, which was already in the figures, and you kind of aggregate that out and say, what's the average been for the schools since 2008, including those bad years, it's still only 2.63.
Right.
So that's not enough. I mean,
That's why we're below the state still.
because this is still, we are restoring from last year. Last year was still not catching up to what had been cut previously. It is a big number for this year, but it's not
Yeah.
taken in totality enough.
And I think everybody is aware of the significant challenges Plainville had in their budget last year. And the data for this year is not out, but we are $1,300 under per pupil spending than Plainville and 1,000 under Rentham. So it's significantly below. Now, that number may close a little bit next year because Plainville had a negative budget increase, or I guess negative budget impact last year. So that might close a little bit, but up until now, they're about $1,300 per pupil higher than Norfolk. So I think that's context that, as you said, it's a highly conservative budget, and it's critical that we bring back those lost positions. We did work very collaboratively with the town, with the hardships that they had last year, and absorb those losses for this year, but it's critical to bring them back to move forward with the caliber of education we're looking to provide.
Especially following this year, our students are going to need a lot of support that we want to provide in terms of intervention, in terms of social emotional, support. We're not coming off of a typical year, so I think it's even more so imperative that we do have these positions, brought back, or the ones that we're asking to add, like the developmental math special, assistant, just to help support our kids, as
Can we
they-
just add it and just bump it up
Yeah.
like 2.2% or something?
I think we are stretching the town's capacity to fund the schools, and we're doing the best that we can to work collaboratively with the town, but within the means that they have to support the budget. Yeah. And I apologize for the glitch. I'm working off a different computer, so I don't know what I hit that changed that slide, but it is actually correct online, and it's correct in your packet, so apologize for that.
All right, we do not have any hands raised or anything in the chat, so, yes, I guess that was an incredible presentation, so we've
Very
answered any and all
thorough.
questions.
And math.
So we would, we need a motion so we would need a motion to accept the budget as presented.
I
Next
move,
meeting.
Next meeting.
what's that?
We're going to adjourn, and then the
Okay.
school
Yeah,
committee
we're
will
gonna adjourn
deliberate
this
on the
meeting.
I
budget
move
in
to
the next
adjourn.
meeting.
Yes.
Seconded.
Okay, assuming no further discussion, because we're gonna be right back in 2 minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Hands.
Good to go?
I know, I think I need to.
All right, we will call tonight's second meeting of the Norfolk School Committee to order for Tuesday, March 3rd at 8 o'clock, we'll call it. And in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, subsection 20, relating to the coronavirus outbreak emergency, the March 3rd, 2021, 7:30 PM Norfolk School Committee meeting held live at the Norfolk Town Hall, Room 124, shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Public access to this meeting shall be done through NCTV. This application will allow users to view the live meeting. Questions and comments submitted prior to the meeting will be read by the chair during the open public comment. The meeting will be recorded for future broadcast by the Norfolk Community Television. School committee meeting documents may be found on the Norfolk Public Schools website at www.norfolk.k12.ma.us. Questions and comments can be submitted to Norfolk School Committee questions at norfolk.k12.ma.us. And just as a reminder, questions for the school committee must be submitted prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting in order for them to be read at the meeting. And as we start out every meeting, read the mission statement, which is the Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Roll call, please.
Sarah Ward.
Shannon Manessis?
Jennifer Wynn?
Medora Champagne.
Ingrid Alardi?
Victoria Soldano?
Thomas Doyle. All right, first we'll start out with public comment. We have two this evening that I'll read. First was, I'll just read it in its entirety. Good afternoon, can you please read this question during the public comment of tomorrow's meeting? I received a survey from the Norfolk Public Schools with respect to a request to complete a survey for in-person learning. I was not afforded the option to respond given that my child is in kindergarten and a decision has been made for kindergartners not to return to full-day in-person instruction this year. Can you please elaborate on this decision and explain why parent feedback or input was not solicited? In addition, where is the funding for full-day kindergarten being reallocated, given there are no plans to bring back kindergartners back full-time this year? And the second one is addressed to the Norfolk School Committee. And this is the Norfolk Special Education Parents Advisory Council recently convened to discuss the district learning plan recommendations made at the February 9th school committee meeting. As CPAC, we would like to applaud the efforts made by this district to work to bring back so many students at so many levels of need. We're happy to hear about the plans to bring back more of the general education population in preschool and grades 1 through 4. However, we request you further elaborate on how the district plans to bring back our most vulnerable learners in kindergarten, 5th, and 6th grade, specifically those accessing support services through an IEP or a 504. Many parents in our special education community do not feel their child's needs are being met in the current hybrid model. We respectfully request you prioritize all supported students in grades K through 6 before the general education population. We feel it is important that we share our concerns with you this time, given that DESE recommends that districts work closely with parents and special education parent advisory councils, CPACs, to determine the unique needs and circumstances of each individual student. Communication and transparency of student-centered decisions-making is essential. And that is from the Norfolk Parents Advisory Council, or CPAC. So just regarding those two comments, Dr. Lard will be following up directly with them to answer those concerns that were raised.
Yep, and I'll also provide an update when we get to that agenda item tonight.
Okay, separately, moving on. Nothing for me, school committee chairs, nothing going on, so we move right on to Dr. Lardy.
All right, so the first thing you have for tonight is to consider and vote on the proposed FY22 budget request. So I think we just went into that in great depth. I'm happy to answer anything more you might have, but otherwise I think you probably are ready to move forward with the vote on that request.
So do
Tell
we
me
have a
more
motion?
about this math.
Never live it down.
I don't think Winthor's in
Get
favor.
out the whiteboard, I'm gonna do some math.
So do we have a motion to accept the fiscal year 2022 budget as presented?
I move to accept the FY22 budget. as
Seconded.
Presented. Enthusiastically.
Any discussion beyond that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next item we have for tonight is to vote on the proposed FY21-22 school year calendar. We know that our parents start looking to make summer plans, camp plans, all of those things. So the proposed calendar is included in your packet. It looks very similar to our traditional pre-Labor Day start. You'll notice that we did continue the shift of parent conferences to November to December, and that is so that we can have parents can have conferences after the first report card is released. We found that worked well. Also, we continue to try to align our full professional development days with Plainville, Rentham, and King Philip so that we have that opportunity to share costs for professional development programming. Happy to answer any questions that people may have. Additionally, behind that, you'll see the draft of the school committee calendar for 21-22 with the reflection of continuing with the second Tuesday of the month, meetings on the second Tuesday of the month.
Can I ask one question about the school calendar?
Yep.
And it's really silly, I think I answered my own question, but there's no school on the 20th, the Juneteenth. But the last day of school is the 15th, is that because there's no school in case we have to make up snow
That
days?
is in case there's snow days.
Okay.
So the calendar has the last day of school as the 15th, and then you see below tentative snow days, 16th, 17th, and it would normally be 20, 21, and 22.
Oh, okay.
The 20th is now a holiday, Juneteenth.
Yeah.
So it would be the 16th, 17th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd.
Got it, okay.
Are required.
Great, thanks.
Why is February break so late? Is it just?
It aligns with a holiday, Monday.
Oh, okay.
So
Got
it's-
it.
it's
I got
always
it.
around the
Yeah.
same with April.
Got it.
Just to get that extra long December break again.
I see that,
Yeah, I like
and
that.
April as well.
Mhm.
So, got it.
There's no questions, if you, and I don't know if the committee wants to consider a change of evening for the meetings, or if Tuesdays continue to work, so we just put that in as a draft. Although you'll notice the May meeting is, we usually do the public hearing on the budget the first Wednesday, so the May meeting, that's an error, actually. Pam,
Should be
we'll have to
March,
switch
right?
that, it should be the March meeting.
Yeah.
Should
Yeah, I
be-
was gonna.
I was like, wait, isn't it March today?
Sorry, I'm just reading down the calendar. We'll
thought
have to
maybe you
make
guys
that
switched it.
adjustment, so the May meeting would be the 10th and the March meeting would be the 2nd. So we'll make that revision.
Actually, what about consideration of town meeting? And that's why we got that on May 4th? Is that scheduled for May 3rd?
Town meetings usually,
Is it usually?
yeah,
Usually
no.
Later in May?
Second week, isn't it?
It
Yeah, it's
is.
usually later in May, because the
Middle of May, right?
election is the first week of.
Yeah, a town meeting might be the 10th, so maybe that's why that meeting's moved forward. But it would typically be on a Tuesday night, so. We
All right,
could
we
maybe
can-
move that to the 3rd or to the 17th. We usually meet after the town meeting, actually, so.
I'm pretty confident none of us have plans penciled in for May of 22 at this point on a Wednesday.
May
so-
17th, 2022 is available.
Shane, you already got some stuff lined
I
up there?
do, guys.
I got a
I'm
hot
booked.
Dungeons and Dragons game.
I mean, August 10th, I expect a kickin' birthday party from you.
Oh, is it your
Obviously.
birthday? There you go.
Now you just ruined the surprise. But okay, whatever.
So the March one will be moved tonight?
So the March would be March 2nd.
Okay.
We usually have the budget hearing early because we don't know what week we have to present to advisory and we need the budget voted. So it would be March 2nd, and then the change in May I would suggest May 17th, because we usually meet after the town meeting, once we know the budget's approved.
And after election.
All right, so then, do we have a motion to accept both the school year calendar and school committee calendar, I guess with that one change for the May meeting?
So moved?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, everyone in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next item is school choice. So the school committee is required to vote annually whether or not to actually to withdraw, if you choose to withdraw from the provisions of the school choice law. I would recommend, as I have in the past, that Norfolk not participate and vote to withdraw from the interschool school choice law, primarily because, well, there's quite a few different reasons, but primarily because of class sizes and enrollment. If you accept students into school choice, then you commit that you will keep those students throughout the remainder of their elementary career. It's not a year-to-year decision. With the numbers that are growing rapidly in district and the class sizes we have that are approaching the higher end, I would recommend the committee withdraw. Additionally, the cost of educating students through school choice, we get some additional funding, the state funding that follows the child, but the actual costs can exceed what we receive. So I would suggest at this point that we vote again to withdraw from the Interschool School Choice Program. Happy to respond to any questions people may have.
Okay, so do we have a motion to not opt into the school choice program?
I'll make a motion to not opt into the school choice program.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further questions or discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And then the last item I have today is just to update the committee on where we stand in our plans for returning to in-person learning. And I will address some of the elements that were raised. So we appreciate when people have public comment. It always helps us to think through plans and make sure that we're addressing needs as best we can. So at this time, we continue to work towards planning for bringing more students back to in-person learning beginning in April. We did send a survey out yesterday. We are looking right now at grades 1 through 6. We sent a survey out yesterday. We are in the process of gathering data on whether or not students, with the changes in safety protocol that we will need to put in place, whether or not students will be accessing school-based transportation, as well as whether or not they plan to remain in the current learning model that they are in or want to be considered to change from either in-person to remote or from remote to in-person. So that survey went out yesterday, and we're looking to have all of the surveys returned by no later than Friday, March 5th, because we need that data to move forward with our plans. As I mentioned, in order to bring all of our students back, we do have to make some changes to our classroom protocols. While we're gathering the data from parents, our team has been continuously working on plans. There's a lot of operational and technical details that have to be worked out to make this transition smooth and safe for students and staff. So one of the biggest things that we are working on are plans for what lunch will look like at each building. In order to bring students back in the classrooms, we have to reduce social distancing to closer to the 3-foot standard. When we want to do that, we needed to, over the past probably week and a half, measure and assess all of our classrooms to ensure that they can accommodate the students that are currently enrolled at that 3 feet of distancing. So we've spent quite a bit of time looking at each of the classrooms, current classrooms, to make sure that we can accommodate that change. We are bringing desks that we have stored for this year out of storage, cleaning them, getting them ready to go back into classrooms. We should be, based on our current numbers, able to accommodate students at the 3 feet of distancing. We are swapping out some of the desks that we had in 6th grade that are larger triangular desks because they are an impediment to us meeting our requirements. We're also working on plans for lunches. Lunches is one of the biggest challenges that we have because of physical space. The Department of Education does require that students be a minimum of 6 feet socially distanced when they don't have masks on, so that would be lunch, snack, or mask breaks. At the H Olive Day, we have to remove furniture and equipment and materials from a section of the cafeteria. Many people probably have seen we've had additional shipping containers delivered to each building, and you'll see people, as I left today, they were carrying cafeteria tables out of the Freeman to store them in those storage pods. So we're removing equipment and relocating some instructional programs in order to free up a second section of the cafeteria. As we've talked about before, our art room, music room, library, all of those are currently in use as instructional spaces. So the only place we have for lunches is the cafeteria, and it's 2/3 of the cafeteria. That allows us to accommodate 60 students at a time at lunch. We are ordering, and you probably saw on the slideshow, 20 more of the 6-foot rectangular tables so that we can have 2 students at a seat with 2 students at a table on either end. Actually, they're 8-feet tables so that they can be 6 feet apart for lunch. The round tables that we traditionally have are 5 feet in diameter, so they take a lot of space. You can only sit 1 student at those big round tables. So those are all being removed, and we're in the process of getting that additional furniture in-house. We will have to have multiple lunch periods for 1st and 2nd grade at each Olive Day because we have class sizes that are about 123, and we can only fit 60 students in at a time. We also have to hire a lunch monitor to help supervise the each Olive Day cafeteria. The plans that we have in order to protect students' safety is that we will try, students will have an assigned seat when they go to lunch. They will sit in the same seat every time they go to lunch, and we are working to try to make the lunch seating plans align with the classroom seating plans, so you're not introducing significant number of new close contacts. At the Freeman Kennedy, again, we're removing furniture. In order to accommodate lunches, we will have to use the cafeteria, the band room, and the music room. Students will be seated at desks versus tables, and again, the same desk every time. Between each of the lunch periods, we also have to clean and sanitize all the desks and leave time for the products to dry and set appropriately. So we have to schedule a 20-minute break between each of the lunch periods. There will be some grade levels at the FK that may need multiple lunch periods as well. Outdoor learning spaces, again, we will not be able to provide snack in the classroom. We have proposed multiple plans to the Department of Ed, and they have been not approved. There's no way to have students eat snack without having half the class leave, because they have to be 6 feet apart from anybody else in the class if they're unmasked. So students will be wearing masks at all times when they're in the classroom. We are going to have to leverage some of our outdoor learning spaces in order to accommodate mask breaks or other instructional opportunities for kids. Fortunately, our facilities team has really been aggressive and ahead of the game right now. Many districts are really having trouble being able to find available tents. We have 6 tents that have been ordered. They're 30 by 30 tents. 4 will be placed at the Freeman Kennedy, 2 at the H. Olive Day School. Those outdoor tents will be able to be used to support snack, mass breaks, and again, small group learning activities to better meet the needs of our students. The tents, obviously, we can't put them up until the snow melts and until the weather improves, because they are not made to sustain heavy snow. So hopefully we're planning to put them up at the end of March, the last week of March, when we feel that the climate and the temperatures will support that. Additionally, as you know, our students are not eligible for vaccines, and we want to make sure that they are as safe as possible as we change requirements in the classroom. So we have been working on plans to increase and improve ventilation. As the weather gets warm, we can have classroom teachers leave windows open whenever the weather allows. And our HVAC specialists will also be changing the HVAC system to bring in 100% fresh air. We cannot do that now because that would overload the heating system. But once the weather gets better, our heating system can sustain and keep the temperatures comfortable in the classroom, even with that outdoor air exchange. So we're working on both of those 2 things now. Also, we have purchased HEPA filter air purifier units that are in every instructional space, so in all of the classrooms as well as in any small group instructional learning space. Staffing is another part of our planning. So as you know, because of the budget restrictions, we reduced several staff positions. We have preschool assistants that we did not hire because of the reduced numbers of students we have in the preschool. We did not fill the librarian position at the Freeman Kennedy. And we also had eliminated lunch monitors. So all of those positions have to be restored in order to support this full return. We have been advertising and interviewing for those positions and expect to have the staffing in place by the time the weather allows us to start bringing students back. Transportation bus routes. So as you know, the Department of Education released about 2 weeks ago new guidance for transportation that lifts social distancing requirements on school buses as long as windows can be down. I think it's 20%. As a result of that, we, on the survey, are asking people what their transportation plans are. The early data looks like about 70% of our parents expect the students to ride the bus to and from school. That will require us to comprehensively redo all the bus routes from ground up. Because of the hybrid model, we're now having all students, so it's going to change the routes. As soon as we get that data confirmed by Friday, that will be turned over to Holmes Transportation to start working on routes. And we will be publishing those probably the third week of March. Kindergarten. So we had some questions from parents today about kindergarten. We certainly would all love to be able to have a full-day kindergarten program again and bring all of our kids back. We do believe early childhood learning experiences are critical for students. Unfortunately, at the H. Olive Day School, we just physically do not have the space in order to do that and meet even the most minimum safety guidelines. Our current program that we're offering at kindergarten is very similar to our past half-day program and is consistent with the state requirements for kindergarten learning time. So in the past, our half-day kindergarten program ran from 8:55 to 11:30. Currently, our kindergarten students come from 8:45 to 11:15. So it's a 5-minute difference. The other change, though, is that we used to provide during the half-day program special subject instruction. All of that has been now moved to the afternoons or remote. So all of the in-school time that students are in school is focused on academics and social development. So that's what those are some of the barriers we have for kindergarten. At the same time, we know that many of our families are disappointed and are looking for additional social opportunities and learning opportunities for their kindergarten students. I have to give a shout out to Norfolk Rec. They have been tremendous partners through this entire experience. They have offered supervised remote learning centers all year for our students in the hybrid and remote learning model. And they have worked with us, and we expect that we will be able to offer through the Norfolk Rec Department a half-day kindergarten enrichment program in the morning and in the afternoon, so that our families that are looking for full-day options and increased opportunities for social emotional learning and play and connection will be able to access full-day programming. And we are also working to be able to provide transportation directly to school and from school from the remote learning sites. So all of the program staff that have been hired to run our supervised remote learning centers for grades 1 through 6 will remain on board and will transition to supporting the kindergarten program. We already have sites secured. We already have all the safety protocol in place. The one thing that's holding us up a little bit is that the rec department has to explore with the state whether or not they have to apply for a temporary license, childcare license, to operate a program during school hours. So we're working on exploring that. Once we have that settled, we'll be able to get registration and information out to parents and families. But again, for those families that are interested, if their child's in the afternoon kindergarten, they could go to the enrichment center for the morning, hop on a bus from there, and come to their afternoon kindergarten program. Vice versa for afternoon students. Another area that we are concerned about, I should also say, we are going to continue to look, once we have finalized all of the details of our programs, we will continue to look at ways to bring more kindergarten students who have unique learning needs, whether it's additional, they need time to access additional special education supports, English language learner supports, or other significant risk factors. We will be looking at ways to increase in-person learning at school for those students. The other population that we've been concerned about is our 6th grade students that will be transitioning to middle school. It has not been a typical year for those students. They've been out of school and in hybrid learning for a year now. So what we have done, our curriculum director, Vicki Saldana, who has talked about ways that we've been creatively looking at grants. Vicki worked collaboratively with the curriculum director from Rentham, the director of student services from Plainville, and with the KP assistant superintendent. And they wrote a grant for $20,000. Is that correct?
I think it's 80 actually.
80,000. 20,000 for us.
Yes.
80,000 combined. Sorry.
All combined. Yeah.
To run a transition to middle school program for students in the summer. It will be a 1-week camp that would run in the last week in July and the first week of August.
Yeah, those are the time frames.
Do you want to talk a little bit about it, Vicki, about what that program will offer?
Sure. So our hope was kind of like to give our students an opportunity to really get to know their peers from the other towns, and in preparation for entering middle school, we know that we want to really focus on giving them some experience in being in a middle school setting. So the program will be located at the KP Middle School. One of the things that our 6th graders have not been able to do this school year because of the safety protocols is practice transitioning between different classes. So we're hoping that with all the shifts that are happening now, we'll be able to offer students an array of activities and give them practice with following a schedule, being able to transition to different activities, with their peers. Also, give them opportunities to do some engaging STEM-based activities, and also just kind of support them with connecting socially with peers. So we're hoping we get approved for the grant. We're really excited for it. I think the program is going to be, we're going to give priority to our teachers and staff in the 3 districts to help support the program, the running of it. So there'll be 2 weeks that will be offered for parents to choose from, like which week would be best, so.
And then lastly, I just wanted to share, I've had some questions from parents about vaccination for education staff. And I did want to say that we were very pleased to hear today the governor announce that teachers will be now eligible for vaccination beginning on Thursday, March 11th. I do strongly believe that our teachers are providing a critical service for students, and that we want to see them vaccinated and protected. I think, because we've been in the pandemic and dealing with these conditions for so long, I think people forget that our teachers in Norfolk came back to work in August. We started the school year in September. At that time, there was very little research about school-based transmission. There was still talk about children possibly being super spreaders of the virus. There was very limited data on reopening. And our teachers came back and took a leap of faith and in the safety protocols that we have in place because they care deeply about their students and wanted to provide the best educational experience for those students. Throughout this pandemic, they've shifted flexibly, and we've responded to parent feedback. When we were looking at increasing synchronous learning time, our teachers learned new technology. They jumped right in, and we were able to implement new methodologies and provide more synchronous learning for all of our students. As things have changed, we have continuously, just this week, we brought back another 15 students at the upper grades who have really been struggling with the remote learning to more in-person learning time. They've continued to shift their classes to welcome more students back and are ready and working collaboratively with us on our plans to return. So I just wanted to say we were pleased to see that the governor opened the program. And as I mentioned before, we had a vaccine clinic planned. The state has now put a hold on employer-run vaccine clinics in order to direct supply back to the state sites. So we are continuing to work with our wellness director to see what we can possibly do to help our teachers access those available appointments and to get people vaccinated as quickly as possible. So happy to take any questions that people may have on our reopening plans.
This is a question, I know the answer to the question, but I'm going to ask you the
Feel
question.
free to ask
So
it anyway.
I'm going to list a few things out. Additional 8-foot tables, additional storage containers, rehiring lunch staff, additional cleaning supplies and time to clean cafeterias between additional lunch shifts, 6 new tents, additional HEPA filters and air purifiers for all classrooms and instructional spaces. Transportation possibly to and from remote learning centers for kindergarten students, and restoring other positions to support a full return to school in April. Out of curiosity, are any of those things free? I know the answer to the question. I'm just
No.
making the point.
Yep.
Anyone who watched the budget presentation that just happened, this is a tremendous undertaking, not just logistically, but financially, in a year when we have very limited resources.
Yep.
I just really want to make that clear. This is all, we have been making do up until this point.
Yep.
With what we have, Band-Aided with federal grant money. And, this is more. I am happy to do it and to find the money and to figure it out. I want my kids back in school full-time. It is not an easy task. And it's not as easy as flipping a light switch on and saying, everybody come back. There are expenses associated with it, and there are logistical considerations associated with it that have to be addressed. So that's my question/comment.
I appreciate that. And I think the important thing is that we want to do this. We've always wanted to have as many kids back for in-person learning for as much time as possible. We have to do it in a way that's safe. We have to remember that none of our kids are eligible for vaccine. We're going to be reducing social distancing. We want to be able to increase the ventilation and airflow in the classrooms. We want to be able to ensure that the HEPA filters are there to protect our students. And as you said, the logistical planning is intense. We have been providing special subject classes all remote. We now have to redo all of those schedules in order to provide those classes in person. We need to reallocate instructional spaces. Once we redo all of our special schedules, it's going to require all of our special education staff and all of our related service providers to redo all of their schedules. So it is intense. It's not an overnight thing. And again, the Department of Ed just released new guidance on transportation, which was one of our major roadblocks 2 weeks ago. And following their guidance, CDC put out contradictory guidance. So we just got a response from the state on that last week. So once we've gotten the clearance, we're moving forward. But also, we need to be able to leverage that outdoor space. We need to be able to put tents up, and the weather and climate have to permit for that, as well as keeping windows open. Transportation guidance requires the bus to have windows down 20%. That's really tough to do if it's raining and snowing. And the Department of Ed said, you should have a backup rain plan. I'm not quite sure what that is when you have 700 students coming in on buses.
They didn't give any examples of how you could have a backup plan?
Raincoats, possibly, but again, I don't want to diminish it. It is a critical priority to get kids back. It is just not an overnight thing, and we're working to do it in a way that is safe for teachers, safe for staff, and safe for kids.
And I think it was actually really educational for me, just as an aside, and I would recommend anyone who's watching and is concerned about this and wants to understand the implications of cutting. We say we're going to cut 6 feet down to 3 feet. Easy peasy, everybody come back to school. If you did not watch the budget presentation, I would encourage anyone who has those feelings to watch the video at the end of the budget presentation. I had not seen physically what 6 feet of social distancing in a classroom looked like, because I'm not going into the school. To have twice as many students in those classrooms that you see in the video, it is going to be a lot more crowded. I mean, it is going to feel crowded for the students who haven't been around that many people in a year, and for the teachers. And, you do have to figure out where you're going to put 20 desks versus 10 desks in a finite amount of space that is already subject to capacity enrollment. So what I have said to anyone who has inquired about this, and I think that we've been very transparent about this, is everybody wants everybody back in full time, but there is planning that's associated with it, because we do have our most limited resource is space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's been a tremendous job so far, and I think that it's going to be fantastic to have every student have the opportunity to come back into the building. That said, my understanding is the Department of Ed is not giving full guidance on that for another 2 weeks.
No, the Department of Ed has, the commissioner is going to be proposing a plan for all elementary students to return, at the beginning of April to full in-person learning. That has not gone to the Board of Education yet for a vote. I believe it is scheduled on Friday. We heard that announcement actually after the press and after the public. So while our district had already been working on an early return to school in April and have been working on a lot of these logistical challenges, many districts have not. And the Department of Ed has said that they will release the report and the commissioner's plan, as well as some additional guidance for lunch, best practices for lunch. We were waiting on additional guidance for music. Recess, that's supposed to be coming in 2 weeks. So many districts will be getting this guidance in 2 weeks and have a 2-week timeline to turn all of that logistical planning around. I know there are many districts that have already said that they cannot make that happen in that time. So I don't know what the vote will be at the Board of Education or whether the commissioner will change that timeline. Again, our district is in a good position because we've been working on these plans. But we don't have final guidance from DESE, and we don't know, I haven't seen the plan or the timeline that the commissioner is proposing. It has not been shared with us yet. It'll be going to the Board of Education for a vote, I believe, this week. I do want to just comment too, because I have had questions from other parents about how have some other area schools in this region been able to bring more kids back. So I am part of a superintendent's roundtable. We meet regularly with other districts in this region. There's about 17 districts represented on that roundtable. In addition, surveys have been going out to superintendents in all districts. 85%, I would say, at this point, of districts that have been able to bring more students back to in-person learning have done it without changing any of their current safety protocols. Walpole, Medway, I believe, has started to bring students back. I spoke with them yesterday. All of their elementary students that are back full-time are still at 6 feet of social distancing. We in Norfolk are out of space. We are over capacity. We have a pending building project at the Age Olive Day with MSBA. There are almost no districts that have engaged in that full return or bringing more students back that have changed their current safety protocols. There are some districts in the Commonwealth that began the year at 6 feet of social distancing, most in areas where they have very high class sizes. King Philip, as you know, they have high school classes.
Do you mean 3 feet? I'm sorry, you said 6 feet. They began?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
There are a small number of districts that began at 3 feet, primarily like King Philip, because they have class sizes of 35 and they would have had to have 3 cohorts, which is just unmanageable. But as far as returning more kids to in-person learning at this stage, and again, conditions have changed. We had a big spike in COVID cases after November, again in January. The districts that have started to make that transition at this point in this area are all able to do so while maintaining the current safety protocols. Norfolk can't do that. We have to make a shift to protocols. We were waiting on guidance from the Department of Ed on transportation. And as you said, we had significant budget cuts. We have to bring staff positions back, and make significant adjustments to facilities, including the putting up the tents that we're going to need to leverage, which you simply can't do. I mean, I'm so glad we didn't have them up after the windstorm that we had last week, because they'd be in Franklin right now. But we are working hard on this. We've been working collaboratively. Our teachers have been great allies throughout this, and are committed to trying to do the best that we can for kids. So, we'll continue to work on that plan.
Ingrid, I know what the logistics, I mean, even in my own staff meeting today, just an hour, and we never really got anywhere about what to do about lunch and this and that. So I appreciate, and I know you always talk to the people on the ground and you get feedback, and I appreciate all the ideas. And I want to make it clear, it is grades right now, 1 through 6, because there was a big rumor going around that 5 and 6 were not coming back. That is not true.
So can I just jump in?
Yeah.
What we were looking to do originally, and we thought was the safest approach, was to phase the return to school and stagger that, prioritizing our youngest learners first. So looking to bring preschool and first grade in, make sure the protocols and the procedures were working well, then expand to grade 2. Same at the Freeman, starting with 3rd grade, adding 4th grade, and working our way up. We are changing protocols and procedures. We want to make sure that it's done safely, that things run smoothly. And so we were talking about a phased return. We think that's the best approach, but we were not talking about not bringing 5th and 6th grade back at all. And we were not talking about a phased return that would be, a month at a time for each grade level. It was just starting and rolling that out in a staggered way to make sure the protocols were working. So there was some misinformation out in the public about that.
And are you thinking like a week staggered, or you're not sure yet?
We are still working on those plans, and they're contingent on us getting that final guidance from DESE to make sure that everything that we have in place aligns, and we're interested to see how the board votes on Friday and what the plans that they release are. So we're working on
So I
that.
know that, again, and I know that the phase-in and the busing is a huge part, and, you also need to get the data back from the parents who will be going in and out, so you have to get that list. And then you also, who does the bus routes, Holmes, or
We
is somebody here?
support it. So our business office, Pam, Barbara, work
You guys
with
look at the
Holmes
whole
based
thing.
on our enrollment and using our student information system data to try to establish those
Out of
routes.
curiosity, in a typical year, how long does it take to figure out bus routes? Just for the public, like, why can't we just get on the bus tomorrow?
You can't
and-
do it in an afternoon?
You can't, no.
There.
It does take a while, because we
You
work
have
with
to-
a
neighborhoods.
finder company, and you have to put all the information in, and,
You have to work with Holmes, because
Right.
they have their other districts that are probably going to be
They support like
challenging. They
15 local
support,
districts that are all working on
I
that.
just want to make that, so I want to make sure I understand that does take time to figure out bus routes.
That's a
Okay.
really great point, actually. So if you could look at a regular year in terms of planning, things like schedules and class placement start in schools around May, where grade levels meet together. They kind of talk about where students should be placed next year, like how to, shift the cohorts. We start talking about busing, and the planning continues through the entire summer. And the fact that this year, we had to shift our schedules and our plans and our transportation, probably, this is our 4th time, I wanna say, and under like a really short timeline. And like our administrative team, like I said, I talked to the principals, and as they call me, it's 7, 8 o'clock at night, and they're just leaving, because it really does take such a large amount of effort, to do that. So kind of give the, how much effort it takes.
And in
yeah.
terms of costs, additionally, we're
Yeah.
not currently running buses on Wednesdays. We have to add that back to the bus contract, and we also have to make sure they have sufficient drivers and buses. So there is a lot, but we've been working on it. We've been expecting and hoping this would happen. We've been chipping away at these plans for months, and continuing to work with staff. So we will be in a position where we're ready once it's safe to do so. And again, that's contingent on the weather improving, being able to change ventilation, getting our tents up. So we're working on all of those things and moving them forward.
And my second thing, and here's where I'm going to push back a little bit, is I really believe strongly that our district model should bring kindergarten back full-time, and maybe not at first, because I understand there's 8 kindergartners, and to do a 30-minute lunch period, minimum 30 minutes, because you need that for teacher, right? Teacher contract, 30-minute lunch period, so you need 30 minutes for each lunch. And I
20
understand.
minutes to clean between.
20 minutes to clean,
And only
there's 8,
60 kids
and
in
you
the
just-
calf.
However, here's where I think we could look at other districts and be creative. Why can't they eat outside under a tent? Why can't they just pick up a little, and I understand the whole lunch thing, can we get rid of the hot lunch? And I know my district, they just get a bagged lunch.
Yeah.
That's all you get.
So the problem with that is that, again, with safety requirements, we cannot send an entire grade level out to recess at once. So we have to send 2 to 3 classes at first grade out, 2 to 3 class, and we've got 7 classes. So between the lunch periods and the recess and the mass breaks, the playground's in full use all day with half the kindergarten. So I don't have anywhere to send them to eat outside. We also
The
don't
back
have staffing.
playground? The back
Both
playground?
playgrounds are fully used because we have to restrict the number of kids outside playing on the playground at any given time.
And even restrict the location, as I understand it,
Yes.
from student feedback I get,
Yes.
within the specific playground. A class goes out, half that class is
Yep.
in one half of the playground, the other half is on the blacktop. There's no, they are
Right.
spread out across the entire footprint
And
of
if you
of the
read
outdoor area.
in the new CDC guidelines, if you reduce social distancing, even though we are going with the state, we'd have to go with the state's lower guidelines. CDC says if you're under 3 feet, you have to really enforce that cohorting and keep classes together and not, and do everything you can to not be crossing. So we need to keep the recesses small, 2 to 3 classes at a time, which means you're staggering that out over the course of the whole day using both playgrounds. There is no additional outside space.
The courtyard?
That
That's
again,
big.
we're gonna be using that for snack and mass breaks. We cannot serve snack for any of the grades in the classroom. None of those proposals were accepted. Certainly agree, would love to have kindergarten be full day. And we'll continue to look at this as we get additional data. There's just physically nowhere for students to be.
So what happens if we, next year, I don't think COVID is going anywhere.
Yep.
Plan for the worst, right? Hope for the best.
Yep.
What happens if the 6 feet rule doesn't go away for eating? I mean, do we look at possibly trailers? I don't know, is that a crazy
So
idea?
what we're trying to do
No?
is get through and get our kids back for this year.
Okay.
But we are gonna be moving into looking at plans, alternate plans, so that we can have everybody back full-time in the fall. And we do always, you have to plan for the worst-case scenario. If we continue to need 6 feet, we're gonna have to look at what else could we potentially do. But right now, the planning is so intensive to try to get K to 6 back. 1 to 6 back, and preschool, we've got to get that to happen, and then we are going to continue to work on plans for the fall for kindergarten.
So, just because I'm a visual, more visual, and
Yep.
it's a lot of auditory going on right now. So what I'm understanding is that with kindergarten, to be full-time, there simply isn't enough outdoor space even to do the small recess sizes that we
Right.
have for first grade, the small recess sizes, the small lunch sizes.
Yep.
There's just not enough outside, because obviously you can't have them in the driveway, because people
No,
are coming in
there's
and
not
out.
enough. We're stretched for outside space right now.
Okay.
So there's, if we could have done that, have half the kids in the classroom eating, half out, one
That's
we'd
what I was
need.
thinking. Could they do
Well, we'd
half
need
in and half-
7 more lunch monitors, because you're monitoring
Well, we
students
can
and
get, we can get that. We can get,
I can't find 2. But even with that, I have nowhere to put the other half the kids that would be playing. There's no outside space available. So even with trying to do that, we don't have, and we wouldn't have the capacity custodial-wise to be cleaning the 6 kindergarten classrooms, 7 kindergarten classrooms after lunch while we're doing the cafeteria. So there's staffing challenges, but it's really comes down to physical space, indoor and outdoor space.
and how about half in the classroom, half lined along the hallway
We can't for fire reasons.
for fire reasons?
We've looked at every.
And I'm just
yeah.
asking
Yeah, no, I
because
think it's
I'm
helpful.
trying to think outside the box. I'm
Yeah.
hearing a lot of parent feedback, advocate, it's just,
Yeah.
they're children and.
Absolutely.
And I know you know that, but, and just,
And that's why, after looking, we can't have kids in the hallway for fire reasons. They have to, also for safety reasons, they can't be eating in the hallway. We've looked at all the options. The best option we have for this year is to partner with REC so that we can offer, and really in a full day kindergarten, Our kids have special subjects, so they're going to art and music, they have lunch, they have a second recess, and they have a rest time. So a big portion of the afternoon is non-academic time. If we can partner with a rec for the half-day program to provide that enrichment, that play time, we are in effect able to offer a full-day option for kindergarten families, even under the adverse circumstances that we have.
And we know what a wonderful job Ann Proto and her staff does, absolutely. Would there be a fee for this enrichment program that they would
We're
have to
looking
pay
at
for?
that. We always provide scholarship funding and free funding for any family that would be eligible or that would need it. We are, in order to make it cost neutral, we would have to look at additional grant funding, and that's something we're looking at. But Ann has kept fees for the remote learning centers very minimal, just to offset the cost of staff. So that we're still working on.
And I'm just gonna throw this out there, and I know this is gonna make me highly unpopular with some people in town. And I don't even know if it's feasible, but to do some of this stuff, if we can get them back, what if we went to the advisory committee and asked, I know we can't ask for a huge amount, but just, this is an emergency situation. Can't they transfer some money in so that, to our account, and again, maybe I'm naive, because this is an emergency to me, to hire more people for, lunch monitoring, to cover the fees for, the rec department, to do that enrichment for people.
I think you're running into a number of issues with that, and what, staffing would be number one. I mean, we can't find, from my neighbor said, 2 lunch monitors, much less 7, so that's gonna automatically be a thing, and it's.
But even with lunch monitors, we have nowhere for those
Right, you
kids
still
to
have the
be.
space
Still have the
issues, so you
space
still
issue.
can't get past that, so it's not just a monetary issue. And then separately, it does become a monetary issue, because I don't know what the town, that would be quite an undertaking to be able to do, and even process-wise, I've kind of think that out for a second.
I don't know, I just know that, when the boiler breaks, you can go to the advisory committee and you could say, we need an emergency $50,000, and they transfer the money over to.
For
if they
capital,
approve.
for capital.
For capital.
From capital.
For
For
capital,
Have an
not for
emergency
soft
fund.
costs.
But that's
Yes,
the different
okay.
thing, and
See,
we're
that's
our
where
own
I'm trying to,
budget,
like-
so it would require, almost require a special town meeting, I
That's
think,
what-
to
yeah,
transfer funds to
probably.
us, and you're not gonna get that organized
not-
in the
not
time.
by
Before the
May.
standard, before the end
Right.
of the school year, yeah.
But again, it's not just a financial situation.
It's more the space
I know
issue's
there
the
was a
problem.
question today about, in public comment about funding for full-day kindergarten. So about probably 7 or 8 years ago, we used to receive a grant, a transition to full-day kindergarten grant. We have not received that for at least 6 years. The cost of operating the kindergarten program, even in a hybrid model, is not different than a full day. Our teachers we need the same level of
still teaching a full
staffing.
day.
They're teaching a full day, the assistants are full day. There's no cost savings to keeping
Oh, I know.
kindergarten
I
half
know
day.
that.
And there's no additional funding to reallocate. Again, it's not a financial need for staffing. It's very hard to fill open positions. We have critical positions we need for paraprofessional staff to support our programs that we've been advertising for months. But it's not just about securing staffing, because even if we had lunch monitors in every kindergarten classroom, I have nowhere for half the class to go. And we proposed multiple models to DESE. We proposed, can we have students in row 1, 3, and 5, and they have said no, not if somebody's sitting next to them 3
And
feet away is masked. So
I think that's an important, I was going to circle back to that because I know you mentioned it earlier, is that, these are not processes and considerations that have been sort of mulled randomly and dismissed out of hand. Proposals have been submitted to DESE to try to work within the space and logistical limitations that we have, particularly at the HOD. And they have been, despite the constant clamoring for a full return for all students, those plans have been rejected, and we can't meet the minimum safety guideline. I mean,
So you tried many of what we talked about here, submitted it to the state, and the
I've
state said no.
worked with the DESE, the COVID-19 DESE lead, Anne Marie Stronach, around potential options for snack. And unless you have half the kids out and you only have half the kids and they're 6 feet apart, they cannot eat in the classroom. They cannot remove their masks. They cannot have snack in alternating rows. We've looked at all of that. So again, even with 4 lunches at the H Olive Day, we're using all the outside space to accommodate the small group recesses, the courtyard. If we're going to offer snack, because again, with 4 lunches, some of our kids are not eating lunch
know,
till 1
till 1.
o'clock.
I know.
They
They're
can't
eating
eat in
lunch
the
at
class,
10:30 in the
so they
morning.
have
I
to
mean,
use the courtyard
they
or
have to
alternate
snack, yeah.
spaces or the tent spaces just to get their snack and mask breaks. So It's not that we haven't looked at these alternatives. We've really exhausted these alternatives. And the best we can do, again, we are meeting the state requirements, not COVID requirements, the traditional
I know.
mandatory requirements for kindergarten. And through the rec department can offer a full day option for families that are looking for that. And again, once we have our plans in place and we can get kids back to learning this year, then we will move to thinking about creative ways to address this challenge should it remain in the fall. But the budget request supports the staffing we need. We need to think about the physical space.
If, I know you said new guidelines are going to be issued by DESE along the specials and whatnot. Do you anticipate DESE to release new guidelines along with the eating and the?
No, they've already, I mean,
they've
that was
already-
just,
they've
I
said
just
it.
spoke with
Okay.
them last week. And CDC and the
Okay.
Department of Public Health and Mass are holding with the 6 feet whenever they're
Okay.
at mask. Because you have to remember, at the same time, you know, we're not seeing significant school transmission, but there are new variants out that we don't know about yet and that seem to have a higher transmission rate among students. So they're not relaxing those unmasked guidance, even though the state's guidelines are significantly less stringent than CDC. The state is holding with 6 feet when unmasked at any time when students are unmasked.
And it's the rule even in public, in a restaurant. I mean, it's still, they've said you can be full to capacity, but you have to be at 6 feet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's still 6 feet to eat,
Yep.
to go anywhere and eat.
I was just wondering why we couldn't get more tents or have them sit on a towel or whatever, but now I understand that it's because you have, unfortunately, the way our town is, it's wonderful that it's so small with 2 schools, but it's also unfortunate because I know Westwood has neighborhood schools, so they've got 3 kindergarten classes, we have 8.
Right.
You know, we have 7 first grade classes,
Yep.
they have 2, like, they can
Very
manipulate
different.
all over, and we are stuck.
I do think it's worthwhile to point out as well, with respect to kindergarten, the change to the focus on having the half-day curriculum be focused on time on learning.
Right.
I mean, because the academic requirements of the kindergarten curriculum are all being met and focused on during that half-day session and in a smaller group environment than a kindergartner would normally have. As far as academic bang for your buck, I feel like that's probably, I mean, it's, you're not having an extended day, you're not having brain drain in the afternoon, you're not worrying about multiple recesses, and I mean, it's not
Trying to
ideal from a
maximize.
time management standpoint. I mean, I work full-time, my husband works full-time. It would be really challenging for us to have had to kind of go back to a half-day scenario. I understand completely the frustration that parents have, but I do think, and to Jen's point, just walking through some of the things that possibly, you'd want to speculate what could be done and why hasn't this been considered. Everybody wants every child back in the schools full-time. Everybody, every teacher that I have encountered, every administrator I've encountered, every parent that I've encountered wants to do that. This is the breaking point. We don't have the space. With 170
We have 169 kindergarten students. 17 are remote right now, although with the survey, we expect probably 50% of those back in school. So yes, in those.
And most of the parents, and I'm just speaking because they're, I guess, my constituents, I don't know, is that the right thing? But they're really concerned, not so much about the academics, but just the
The social
whole
part.
social emotional part.
Yep.
So if we could, I love the rec department, I love that idea, because really kindergarten is also about that. It is so
Absolutely.
critical for just the social
Right.
skills that, there's less and less time for as you get into the older grades. I would just love to see no fee for that, but that's my wish.
Yeah.
I know it's probably,
And again,
a
we would
want.
have to find grant funding for that, but I think that we have really worked to try to provide an option for parents in kindergarten through the rec department. We haven't been able to do that prior because kindergarten students are in 5 days a week. One Wednesday a month they were remote, but they're in 5 days a week. So the remote learning centers were supporting our first, second,
Yep.
third, who are only in 2 days
Yep.
a week.
Yep.
So that space, we've leveraged every available space in town. We have a program at the library, we have the Grange, we have multiple sites for the rec department. but priority was given to first through
Yes.
sixth because of the 2 days, and since our kindergarten students were coming in on a daily basis. So now that those programs may be transitioning, we have space and staffing available to support that. And, you know, I think I appreciate the partnership with the recreation department, because many districts have not been able to offer kinds of additional supports and opportunities. So, and creatively with homes, we're trying to offer that transportation too. So, ideally, I would love to have all of our kindergarten kids. Social development is a critical part of our early childhood education. However, we do have, as you said, significant shortages of space and outside space that we need to support that program. So I think this is the best option. And again, as we plan going forward, we've put forward a budget proposal that will support the staffing that we need for full return for everybody in the fall. That's creatively thought about ways to increase, programmatic support for mathematics. The assistant principal additions will help us support additional support for students and families. We're transitioning some things from our adjustment counselors to the new assistant principals to provide more counseling support. So we've really planned comprehensively for that full return. The space crunch for lunch is the biggest challenge we have. But again, with it being March, once we get our kids back, we have 6 months to work on that next solution should the situation not change for next year.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
With a kindergartner, in thinking about first grade, so when they do go back, that
Yep.
seems like it's already a big transition. Will there be anything in place to transition them to a more full day with all of their peers at one time? Will there be any sort of acclimation to that? I know they've been in school, so it
Yeah.
won't be as drastic, but.
I mean, the beginning part of first grade, our teachers spend a lot of time on that community building, a lot of time on helping kids adjust. We shift the curriculum a little bit, and the expectations are a little different the first few weeks of first grade, and they do that really well. We've only had the full day kindergarten free of charge and consistently for 3 years. Prior to that, they are used to transitioning kindergarten students from a half day to a full day program. Having taught first grade myself for a number of years, the first week of kindergarten, kids are first week of first grade, kids are all excited about coming in and eating in the cafeteria. Kids that have been in a half day, that's what it's all about. And then after lunch, it's about when do we go home, because they're focused on what does the bus look like and all of that. So they've got a lot of experience and expertise and do a nice job with that. We are looking at potential other grant funding to be able to offer some summer enrichment and academic program supports for students, but we don't know what's going to be available and what that's going to look like now, and we don't know what all of our costs to reopen are going to be. So we don't know if any of the additional federal money, which is limited for Norfolk, it's a total of $65,000 for this year and next year. So it's not vast amounts of money, but we don't know what we're going to need to spend to reopening. And then once we know what those costs are going to be, we're looking at additional opportunities over the summer as well.
Okay, great. And I am very thankful for Norfolk Rec as well. I think
Yeah,
that's
they're
going to
great.
be a good option.
Any other questions or on reopening?
Well, to the point where space has become such a major issue, and I'll be super quick with this plug, I hope that everyone who has been frustrated by the lack of space in our schools, when we all have a nice, happy, full return next year, continue to support and advocate for the expansion and the capital projects that we have been publicizing and working to move forward over the past 3 or 4 years at this point to address the enrollment and spacing issues. Very hopeful we never have a pandemic again, but had we already had additional space at our disposal this year, I think that the picture for a full return would look very different. So that's all I'm going to say.
All righty. Moving on, I realized I actually forgot to mention something very quickly under my portion, and that is I was invited to a virtual meeting, and I'm going to butcher the poor gentleman's name, to the congressional representative for here, Jake Ossenschloss. Sure, we'll go with
I was
that.
invited to,
Who else going?
March 23rd.
March 23rd, yes.
March 23rd. It's
Yes.
a virtual 7 PM.
Correct, yeah, 7 to 8 p.m., just,
He's
I don't-
he's our congressman.
yes. So he was just elected,
Yeah,
so
reason
it's
for
nice he's
that.
doing that, sort of a hearing and wanting to know, and maybe some of these discussion points we've just have brought up could be relevant. So That's on March 23rd, 7 to 8 p.m. So our following meeting in April will explain what that was all about. So moving on to committee reports, King Philip?
So we met on the 22nd as well as March 1st. However, most everything from the February 22nd meeting is sort of not valid anymore with all the changes coming out from DESI and everything. So I'm just going to highlight some things from the March 1st meeting. We did accept procedural manuals put together by Lisa Moy outlining procedures for registrations, records, withdrawals, suicide protocols, and things like that. Let's see. That was accepted by the school committee. With the new guidelines, the schools are going to be able to expand after-school activities because of the governor's new announcement. In-person tutoring will begin next week at the middle school, which is great. At the high school, club and activities will be able to meet in the building, and the bus company has been contacted to start reinstating the late buses to help support those activities.
Nice.
There was a COVID mitigation presentation just to remind parents and others about what the protocols are at the school, because a lot of parents haven't been able to be in the school with no open house. So we were given a presentation about the new traffic patterns for pickup and drop off. There's 3 different locations depending on what you're doing, I think. Presentation on the PPE, drinking fountain changes, hand sanitizing stations, floor markings, directional arrows for pedestrian traffic, hygiene, safety in the bathrooms. There are QR codes each student has to scan, whether they're sitting at a desk, going to the bathroom, sitting at lunch. Everyone has an assigned seat, so you know exactly where every student is. And I guess the students have been really great about using the QR codes. Plexiglass everywhere, air quality safety is increased, and there's secondary nursing stations for anyone exhibiting symptoms. There's a COVID subcommittee that is going to join a COVID subcommittee that's already taking place with teachers and admins. There's going to be 3 school committee members that are joining. Bruce Cates, Jim Lehan, and Trevor Knott will be joining to help expand discussion on amending public comment allowances for more public interaction during meetings, talking about how to use Wednesdays a little more proactively learning-wise, and things like that, just so that our meetings aren't 4 hours long. We did accept the 3-year successor contract for Mr. Zinni, so he'll be with us for another 3 years. And Jim Killian will continue as the Rentham Cable Advisory Committee representative unless he is not reelected, and then we will choose someone else, because he is up for re-election this year. And those are really the highlights.
All right. Thank you.
And
Policy.
that's, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
March 15th is the next meeting, and that'll be the final budget meeting.
Got it. Thank you. Policy.
Nothing new to report.
Nothing new in policy. All right, so then we need to review and get a motion on the minutes from our February 9th meeting.
I move to accept the minutes from the February 9th, 2021 school committee meeting.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And we are scheduled for April 8th. Does it work with everyone scheduling wise?
I'm gonna throw a little thing in
Right.
here. I think, can we, and I don't know if this is procedural or not, could we meet a little earlier? I believe March is a long month. There's a lot of things going on right now with DESI coming back with new guy. I would love to meet back in here where we are in the process of everything. And
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
even if people can't make it, as long as it's a quorum, that's okay.
I was going to actually suggest that we try to schedule a second March meeting, March 23rd, so we can present the final plans for returning to learning.
Thomas and I are with the
Yeah,
congressman.
we
I
just-
mean, I'm
Yeah, do
okay.
it.
I didn't
23rd.
pay attention to the
That's
date of
okay.
your meeting, I apologize.
I butchered the poor guy's name and you didn't pay
The
attention?
following, the
Homogeneous.
following week in March, we have advisory board
On the
on the 31st.
31st.
I don't know if there's another day the week of the 22nd that might work
Can
for
we do
people.
a Wednesday, or is that like is it booked here?
The 24th would be okay for me.
So what?
I don't know if it's booked, I won't know until tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll have to check the space, but we could always
So
transition.
so
Or
the
Monday.
purpose of a second March would be for what?
to approve the new return to in-person learning, so I'll have to have all the details of our plans.
So we need to meet before April 1st,
I think
and
we
obviously
should-
sometime to have that planned.
Yeah.
What,
so-
wouldn't it be easier if that's the sole purpose of it, why don't we could do a virtual one for that one, and that gives us more flexibility on dates then, right?
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, is that
We might
the-
be able to do that.
Would we normally
Or
be
we could
meeting on
just move
April
the
8th
April
anyway?
meeting.
That's a Thursday. That's not correct, is
It'd
it?
be
No,
the
it should have been
6th.
April
Okay.
13th.
I mean, not that, I'm just
13th.
saying, I think the date's wrong
Yeah.
regardless.
We're not
of-
up to that part yet.
But we could move the April meeting forward and just do, you know, the 24th if people want to, so we can review the return to in-person learning plan. I won't have a lot, you know, by April 8th, it's 2 weeks later, so we could move that meeting up and delay April.
And you'll definitely hear back from Desi by then, obviously. Sorry.
Maybe we say the week of the 29th.
I know, and I just want to,
No,
for the
right?
public, like,
But if I don't have everything we need by that point, I can let you know and we can postpone.
I'd like an
but
update on like where we are, like the busing,
Yeah.
the.
I think by the
holes,
24th, 3 weeks from now, we should be able to provide that.
You know,
The 24th is a, what day of the week is it?
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
That would be virtual.
And we could keep that as the only agenda item if we start
Yeah,
at
if
7.
that's our only agenda item, I think
Yeah.
it makes sense, and it gives us increased flexibility, we don't have to worry about this room that we're not gonna
Yeah.
know about.
Mhm.
Keep that one virtual, and
Sure.
then,
Yep.
then what we do, we'd have to move, I don't know what we do with April then, as far as it does.
We may, you know, depending
Keep
on where we are, we may be able to cancel the April meeting or push it back. You know, I mean, the April meeting would be scheduled for 2 weeks later than that.
13.
So it would be up to the committee. At that point, we can decide whether we want to.
Yeah, why don't we tentatively plan on was it the
24th?
The 24th, and then April 13th? And then if we cancel the April date, we cancel the April date.
yeah,
I think
I
that's
agree.
fine.
I feel like I need to be a little bit like more in contact over the next
That's fine.
few.
I think the committee needs to review and approve the final plan anyway, so my suggestion was gonna be to meet that week, so
Okay.
I think.
So we
that's
settled
Are you all
the April.
gonna be able to make it? Because I'll be on vacation.
That's fine. I mean,
Yes, it's
whatever,
fine.
as long as we have a quorum,
I could
it's
probably
fine.
call in. But
No,
That's fine.
right?
Wait,
Not
which
even
one?
three.
I get it.
Fine. John.
The March 24th
March
meeting.
March
24th one?
24th.
Okay.
But that-
Okay, so so March 24th will be basically
Virtual.
one item, which will
Yep.
be, and then
An
will be
update on the
virtual.
return.
If it's virtual, I can call in.
You're from
Don't
vacation,
call
that's
in
fine.
from vacation.
Not on your vacation.
It's my last day of vacation.
I know,
Especially if
then
you're
enjoy
somewhere
it.
Right.
warm and telling us, well, no, you can't travel. Don't tell us.
No, it's in Massachusetts.
And then, okay, so then 4/13 would be in person here.
Yep.
Normal, business from there. Is
Yep.
that, okay.
That sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so then we just need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Oh, so moved.
We need someone to so second.
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 All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We are concluded.